caught my fiancé making out with my brother an hour before our wedding, exposed them in front of everyone, and took myself on the honeymoon instead. No regrets. I walked into my wedding and saw my fiancé kissing my brother. 28F here, and yeah, this actually happened. I never thought I'd be that person with the most insane wedding story ever, but life sure has a way of proving me wrong. I was engaged to Jake, 29M, my boyfriend of 6 years. We had what I thought was a great relationship, solid, supportive, and full of love. My brother, Ryan, 32M, was always my rock growing up. He practically raised me when our parents were working crazy hours. So yeah, this betrayal hit different. The wedding was supposed to be perfect. Everything was set up just how I wanted it. Simple, elegant, nothing too over the top. I was feeling good, excited, and just ready to marry the guy I thought was my soulmate. But fate had other plans. About an hour before the ceremony, I realized I'd left my phone in the bridal suite. I went back to grab it, and that's when I saw them. Jake. Ryan. Making out. At first, my brain didn't even process it. I literally stood there, holding the doorknob, staring like an idiot. Then Jake pulled away and had the audacity to look annoyed. Ryan? He just turned red and muttered, "I can explain." Like, really, dude? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked out. Straight past my bridesmaids, straight outside, and I sat on the curb in my wedding dress, feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. My maid of honor, Sarah, found me and was like, "What happened?" And all I could say was, "Jake's cheating on me." With Ryan. She thought I was joking at first. When she realized I wasn't, she went into full crisis mode. Now, here's where things get wild. Instead of canceling the wedding, I decided I wasn't about to let them ruin my day. Nope. I went back inside, wiped my tears, and told Sarah to make an announcement. Ceremony starting in 10 minutes. I could see the confusion on everyone's faces, but I didn't care. When I walked down the aisle, Jake was standing there, looking nervous as hell. He must have thought I hadn't seen anything, because he gave me this sheepish smile. Ryan was standing off to the side, avoiding eye contact. We got through the vows, but when it was my turn to say I do, I took the mic and said, "Jake, I was going to marry you today. But instead, I'd like to give you a chance to confess something first. Go on, tell everyone why you're sweating through your tux." The whole room went silent. Jake's face turned white. He looked at me, then at Ryan, and I could see the panic in his eyes. My mom whispered, "What's going on?" and my dad looked ready to throw hands. When Jake didn't say anything, I took a deep breath and said, "I walked into the bridal suite earlier and saw Jake making out with my brother. So, I think we should all take a moment to reconsider why we're even here." Cue absolute chaos. My mom started crying, my dad did throw hands, and Jake just stood there stammering. My brother looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. I handed the mic back to the officiant and walked straight out of there. Sarah, bless her, grabbed a bottle of champagne and followed me out. We sat in the back of the venue drinking straight from the bottle while my phone exploded with messages. Jake begging me to talk. My brother trying to apologize. My aunt asking if this was a prank. Nope. No prank. Just my actual life imploding in real time. Eventually, I went back inside, but only to grab my things. As I walked past the reception area, I could hear Jake trying to explain himself to our guests, saying it was just a mistake, a one-time thing. I grabbed the mic one last time and said, "If it was a one-time thing, why do you two have a hotel booked for next weekend?" "Yeah, I saw the confirmation email, dumbass." And with that, I left. Jake and Ryan tried to reach out for weeks, but I blocked them both. My parents were heartbroken, but honestly, the whole situation helped me realize a lot. Jake had been distant for months, and now it all made sense. As for my brother? Yeah, I don't think we'll ever be close again. Instead of wallowing, I took my honeymoon trip alone, and it was the best thing I've ever done for myself. Bali without a cheating fiancé? 10 out of 10 would recommend. Fast forward a year, and I'm now dating someone who actually respects me. I haven't seen Jake or Ryan since that day, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, moral of the story? Trust your gut. And if you ever catch your fiancé kissing your sibling, cancel the wedding immediately. Update 1. After I walked out of my wedding, things escalated way more than I expected. I thought cutting off Jake and Ryan would be enough, but nope. Turns out, drama doesn't end just because you want it to. First off, let's talk about my parents. My mom was devastated. She kept calling, texting, trying to convince me to talk to Ryan and work things out because, in her words, family is forever. I wasn't having it. I love my mom, but I told her straight up that this wasn't some dumb sibling fight where one of us borrowed the other's clothes without asking. This was betrayal. From two people who should have had my back. My dad, on the other hand, was furious. He hasn't spoken to Ryan since the wedding, which honestly makes me feel bad, even though I know it's not my fault. Apparently, he cornered Jake at some point during the reception and told him if he ever came near me again, it wouldn't end well. Gotta love protective dad mode. Jake, for his part, has been relentless. He tried calling me dozens of times in the weeks after, left voice messages crying, saying it was a mistake and that he still loved me. As if that would somehow undo everything. He even showed up at my apartment once. I didn't let him in, but we had a conversation through the door that went something like this. Jake, it wasn't what it looked like. Me, dude, I saw it with my own eyes. Jake, but it didn't mean anything. Me, oh, cool. So, you were just randomly swapping saliva with my brother for fun? He didn't have much to say after that. Ryan, though. He's been quieter. I think he knows there's no coming back from this. He sent me one long email apologizing, saying it was complicated and that it just happened. He actually had the nerve to write that he never wanted to hurt me. As if sneaking around with my fiancé wasn't the definition of deliberately hurting me. I never replied. I couldn't even read past the first paragraph without feeling sick. And then, there was the gossip. You'd think this was some small-town drama the way people in our social circle latched onto it. Friends, co-workers, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out with their thoughts. Some were supportive, others? Not so much. A few people actually suggested I should have kept it private instead of calling them out at the wedding. Yeah, sure. I should have just smiled and walked down the aisle like nothing happened, right? But the real kicker? I found out this wasn't even the first time Jake had done something like this. A mutual friend, who I'll call Melissa, told me she caught him flirting hard with her at a party 2 years ago. She never told me because she thought it wasn't serious, but after everything went down, she felt guilty and spilled the beans. Apparently, she wasn't the only one, either. I wish I could say I was shocked, but honestly, I was just tired. I did end up going on the honeymoon trip alone, and it was the best decision ever. 2 weeks in Bali, just me, a few books, and a whole lot of self-reflection. I did some touristy things, met some great people, and finally felt like I could breathe again. There was this one moment, sitting on the beach at sunset, where I just thought, I'm free. And I hadn't felt that way in a long time. When I got back, I decided it was time to get my life back on track. First thing I did? Therapy. Best money I've ever spent. My therapist helped me unpack not just the betrayal, but also why I didn't see the red flags sooner. Turns out, I had been ignoring a lot of small things that should have clued me in. Like the way Jake was always too busy for wedding planning, but somehow always had time to go help Ryan with stuff. Or how Ryan would change the subject every time I talked about the future with Jake. Yeah. Hindsight is a cruel thing. In terms of my relationship with my family, things are still tense. I've kept my distance from Ryan, and my parents are kind of stuck in the middle. My mom keeps trying to get us to talk, but I told her I need time. Maybe one day, I can forgive him, but right now, I just can't. Oh, and in case anyone was wondering, Jake and Ryan? They're not together. Apparently, whatever they had ended the second I exposed them. I don't know if it was guilt, shame, or the fact that their relationship was built on lies, but it didn't last. Small consolation, I guess. And speaking of moving on, I started dating again. Nothing serious, just dipping my toes back in the water. It's weird after being with someone for so long, but it's also kind of exciting. I've been focusing more on me, and honestly, I'm loving it. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's that life goes on. It doesn't matter how much someone breaks you, you will heal. And sometimes, getting betrayed is the best thing that can happen because it clears out the people who don't deserve a place in your life. A part of me wonders if I'll ever fully trust someone again, but I think that's just part of the process. For now, I'm focusing on myself, surrounding myself with people who actually care, and living my best life. And Jake? I heard he moved out of town after everything went down. Guess he couldn't handle the fallout. Good riddance. Update 3. Alright, so here we are. A year later, and somehow, life is good. I never thought I'd say that after the absolute dumpster fire that was my wedding day, but time really does heal, or at least dull, the sting of betrayal. Let's get the big one out of the way, Ryan. He reached out again. I ignored him for a while, but eventually, curiosity, or maybe just the need for closure, got the better of me, and I agreed to meet him for coffee. I walked in with zero expectations, and honestly, I'm glad I did because the whole thing was just sad. He looked worn down, like life had taken whatever pride he had left and chewed it up. The first thing he said? I know I ruined everything. No excuses, no justifications, just straight up admitting he messed up. He told me how after everything went down, he fell into a rough patch. He lost friends, opportunities, and apparently, his job. He said he's been trying to work on himself and that he missed having me in his life. I listened, but I didn't say much. When he finished, I told him I appreciated the apology but that forgiveness isn't instant. I needed time, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever fully trust him again. He said he understood and that he was willing to wait. I left feeling lighter. I'm not saying we're suddenly close again, but I think, someday, I might be able to have him back in my life in some capacity. Just not yet. And then, there's Jake. Good ol' Jake. The last I heard, his whirlwind engagement fell apart. Apparently, his new fiancé found out about me and how our relationship ended. Guess the universe has a sense of humor after all. I got a random text from him a few months ago, some week I miss you nonsense. I didn't respond. Nothing good ever comes from reopening old wounds, and honestly, I've outgrown that whole mess. Family dynamics are still complicated. My mom is still holding on to hope that one day we'll all sit around the dinner table like one big happy family, but I think she's finally starting to accept that things have changed. My dad, on the other hand, still refuses to even mention Ryan's name. I think it hurts him more than he lets on. It's weird seeing your parents struggle with stuff like this when you're so used to them being the strong ones. On a more positive note, my friends have been absolute MVPs through all of this. Sarah and I patched things up after our little revelation about her past with Ryan. It took some awkward conversations, but ultimately, I realized she didn't owe me a full rundown of every person she'd ever dated. She's been super supportive, and honestly, I don't know how I would have gotten through the past year without her. Now, let's talk about me. Because, for the first time in a long time, I actually feel like me again. I've been focusing on things that make me happy, traveling, trying new things, and just living life on my own terms. That solo trip to Europe I mentioned? Best decision I ever made. I backpacked through Italy, ate way too much pasta, got lost in little side streets, and had the time of my life. And yeah, I dipped my toes back into dating. It's been interesting. Some good experiences, some hilariously bad ones, remind me to tell you about the guy who showed up to our date with his mom, but overall, I'm having fun. No pressure, no expectations, just seeing where life takes me. One of the biggest changes, though, is how I see relationships now. I used to put so much of my worth into being someone's girlfriend, someone's future wife. But now, I'm just enjoying being my own person. And I think that's the healthiest thing to come out of all of this. Oh, and in case you're wondering, yes, I finally threw out my wedding dress. For a long time, I kept it tucked away in the back of my closet like some weird, painful relic. But one day, I just woke up and realized I didn't need it anymore. So I donated it. Hopefully, it'll bring someone else happiness, because it sure as hell didn't bring me any. People still ask me if I regret what happened. If I wish I'd never found out, if I'd rather have been blissfully ignorant. And the answer? No. As much as it hurt, as much as it flipped my entire world upside down, I'm glad it happened. Because now, I know what I deserve. And it sure as hell isn't a lying fiancé and a backstabbing brother. I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that healing isn't linear. Some days, I feel like I've got it all figured out. Other days, a random song or an old memory hits me like a truck, and I'm right back in that bridal suite, watching my life fall apart. But it gets easier. And I'm proud of how far I've come. So, what's next? Who knows? But for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. And to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust me, it gets better. Cut out the toxic people, focus on yourself, and don't be afraid to put yourself first. Ryan apologized, Jake got dumped, I traveled the world, and I finally feel like myself again. Life goes on, and honestly, it's pretty damn good.